Hello, my name is Sarah Nickerson. I'm a psychic medium intuitive, and I have a mission. I want to help people connect with their own psychic mediumship abilities, integrate their intuition, and get aligned with their life purpose. So, these are my missions. Why? Because when I was 33, I discovered my own psychic medium abilities. This was not something I considered before, and then it happened. And then here I am talking about this stuff, and it has changed a lot about my life. And recently, I've been thinking a lot about what were those aspects of change. Because when I talk about psychic mediumship, what I don't maybe touch upon so much, and maybe has been more a part of how I talk about it, is the interchange that really occurred with this stuff. And the value and the transformation, the self-development, the empowerment that transpired in that process, I feel like could help a lot of people. And a lot of it's very like cultural in how we deal with emotions, which psychic mediumship, we think of like mystical, magical place. But the true transformation comes from one, being able to understand the world in a perspective where you're able to step back and look at it, including looking at yourself. But another aspect is understanding how emotion is a tool and not an obstacle. And with psychic mediumship, you really get to know that relationship and how it's dysfunctional in you, because it's dysfunction, which was developed in your social life and conforming and molding you into something that really you're not. That gets translated in viewing information in the psychic realm. And so you carry the same perspective in both of these places. And when you see its dysfunction in trying to obtain information, you start recognizing the dysfunction in yourself. And when you learn to acquire information by clearing a lot of the stuff out of the way, not all of the stuff, but at least you get started somewhere, it ties over to a social life. And then you really start interacting in the world, or at least how your brain is processing that world becomes very different. Today's episode. So when I do one of these episodes, I'm always going to explain how to tap into that psychic medium place. Wonderful subject today is actually a widely available movie that can show you how to do it. And so that's what I wanted to talk about in this episode today. And there's a reason why there was sort of this long pause between videos, because nothing was really hitting me that inspired me to want to just sit and chat. I've also been really busy, and so I haven't been able to do this kind of stuff a lot. And part of that's because I'm working on a podcast that I want to release on the first day of spring. It's going to be a story of my journey. That's also going to include like my own personal story along with my transformation story, and give some insight as to things I've learned along the way in my transformation that makes me look at this life story and transformation story and gives me a little perspective and that I can pass along to you. But today's episode, I wanted to talk about something on Netflix. So, this story starts with Richard Ayoade, who is a British comedian, actor, director, author, all-around awesome guy. I discovered this guy, I don't know, a couple years ago. And ever since then, it's sort of like one of these kindred spirits of the world that I just feel this automatic connection with, and I love him. I love this guy. And so I saw that he did a show that was released on Netflix, and I say show, um, it says, I don't understand that part, but it's based on a short story, and it was only 40 minutes long on Netflix. I think. I can't remember. But I saw that Richard was doing this and it was being released on Netflix. I didn't have that streaming service at the time. I've grown tired of waiting for HBO and Hulu to release things that I care about, which I'm kind of really picky when it comes to things to watch. So they're just not living up to it for me. So I was like, well, let's subscribe to Netflix. I know there's something on there that I do want to see, and let's just do that. Excuse me. So, started the subscription with Netflix again because of this project. I think there are multiple factors that I was interested in watching this. One, Richard Iwani. Two, it's a Wes Anderson directed movie, and I'm a big fan of directors that make it quite obvious that what you're watching isn't reality. You know, like there's a lot of movies out there where they try to play off like this, you're supposed to buy into this as reality. And directors like Wes Anderson, Stanley Kubrick, Terry Gilliam, they really go for an artistic point of view with what they do. And to me, just like it's easier for me to get into a movie when people make it what it actually is, as opposed to trying to hide what is actually happening. I don't know if that makes any sense. And so I have a hard time watching movies because I'm just like, I don't buy into this. This is not reality. Like, you're trying to tell me this is real. No, this isn't reality. And these kinds of directors are just calling it for what it is. And they're elevating it in artistic ways visually that really draw my attention and kind of suck me into the story that they're presenting and telling. The other aspect of this is that it's a Roald Dahl, I don't know if I say that right, Roald Dahl short story. Yeah, my throat is not happy today. Roald Dahl, if I say that right, he is the author of all these children books that I grew up with, including Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda, The Witches. I'm sure there's so many more that are just escaping me, but I remember being a kid and reading these books and just eating them up, and it is a huge part of sort of understanding storytelling and being exposed to the imagination with reading books, and he was a huge part of that. And then movies made from these books. And so already there's that connection too, which is sort of ingrained in us culturally. And so there's a third factor to go watch this. Okay, so there's why I was interested. You know, all of these things were really cool to me. When I pulled it up to watch it, I saw that Benedict Cumberbatch was in it, and my husband was a big fan of the Sherlock Holmes series. So that's initially how I got really exposed to Benedict Cumberbatch. He was also in, I think, a Marvel's movie, DC. I don't care about the superhero franchise, but the one that he was in with Tilda Swanson, it really had me intrigued because it spoke in foundational ways to my spiritual knowing stuff that I really was taken on a journey with that movie in a way that any other superhero movie, like, it does not even touch it. And that movie really kind of hit me in ways that like hit me in a truthful, experiential, truthful way. And so Benedict kind of piqued my interest in this. And then also, like, who are the other actors in this? Let's just call them out here. Dev Patel, I've seen his name around. This was the first time that I really watched a movie and could name who he was simply because I looked at the credits. Ben Kingsley, like, come on, that guy can do no wrong. Ralph Fiennes? Fiennes? Uh-oh. Well, he's a face that you certainly know, but maybe you don't know his name. He was awesome in it. I also caught a glimpse of Jarvis Cocker. Did like a little cameo in it. Who's that guy? So Jarvis Cocker is the lead singer of a band called Pulp, and they were big with the like 90s kind of 2000s-y British invasion kind of stuff. And there was a song they did called Common People. Go listen to that song. And if you know that song, then you're going to be like, oh, okay. Or you're going to be like, oh, yeah, that's a great song. That song got me to buy a greatest hits Pulp album. And that was just an album that was integral to my kind of getting out of childhood into adulthood phase. So already there's something else to add to this story of some sort of connection. And fun fact, Jarvis Cocker, the nephew of Joe Cocker, who's also a British musician, and he was in Woodstock, and like he had a career that people would know about. So fun fact. Okay, so let's get to it. So I sit down, I'm watching the movie. I didn't know what the story was going to be about. But once I'm recognizing where we're going with the story, my antenna is going up because the story is about a man. Well, it's actually about two men, but it's about a man. It starts off with a man who can claim that he can read a book without using his eyes. And so he goes to these doctors and has his head all bound up so he can visually not see anything, and holds things in front of him and tells people what it is. And he's proving that he can do that. And it's a skill he acquired. My brain automatically goes to, oh, this is psychic ability. They don't ever say psychic, and they don't say what kind of ability this is, which is clairvoyance. But this is my reality. And here we are exploring this in this short story. Supposed to be seemingly this fictional story. Like, this is how it's being played off. And I'm watching through this and seeing along the way how they're actually going into how this man learned this skill and this ability. And if I had known that this movie was going to be about this and go in this direction, I probably would have had a lot more hesitation with watching it, because there's so much in our culture and our society that in media, TV shows, movies, that sensationalize and don't accurately depict the psychic experience in this specific case. And usually sensationalize it to be something fearful, something scary. And so I go into these, I know my throat, I'm sorry, you guys. I usually go into these kinds of media situations where I'm kind of like, oh God, here we go. Like, how are they going to make my mission more difficult? How are they going to scare people away from this, from wanting to explore this for themselves? This is my mission. This is the transformation I went through that led to me feeling most connected to myself unlike any other time in my life, and solidly so. Like, it is in my bones, this truth, and the power that I now feel like I have that I had never been able to access before. And it's not superpowers, it's understanding how I have control of me gaining awareness of how I didn't have control of me, fighting the very things that were going to set me free. Like, oh, like this is big, big stuff that makes you go from a person that feels like, oh, just bad shit just happens to me, to someone that goes, bad shit's happening, but I have complete control over this situation. Like it's just a completely different mindset. It's a completely different perspective of moving through this world. So this is what I fight with this kind of stuff. And very rarely do I come across something that I'm like, this speaks to my truth. And this is helping me with my mission, because it's helping other people see it the way that I have experienced it, in my knowing and my truth. So as we're moving through this story, I'm taking in the information that's being shared in this short story, fictional short story. And so I'm anticipating something that's going to come along that makes me go, oh, all right, this now it's ruined for me, because that's not how it works. Or and I shouldn't say that's not how it works. I say that doesn't speak to my truth, right? That's the way I should be saying that. But I'm watching this whole movie, and there's not one thing in here that makes me go, ew, or ugh, or so close. It's right on. And not only that, but it's actually utilizing the way that I had that transformational experience that I share with other people, in utilizing the tool of meditation. And that is in this as well. And even goes a little bit further with it. And I can totally see how I'm getting frustrated with having to clear my throat. I can see how going beyond just, he meditated and then he started knowing, like, it goes beyond that into instruction that I think is very accurate for people. And I'd love to be able to go through this movie and be like, oh my gosh, okay, let me tell you why this is an important part of tapping into your psychic mediumship. Or let me tell you how I understand how things are working here, so that you can have sort of a logical understanding. And so I'd be talking about like brainwave activity and getting into the daydream state and that stuff that I will be talking about later on in this video. But this movie really gives a broad instruction on how to tap into psychic abilities, which is also where mediumship is. Goodness. What else was in this movie? So there is a second character in this movie who actually learns this technique. And he's kind of a shady dude. And his intentions of learning the ability started with a selfish, egotistic reason. And then there's a transformation that takes place. And it's interesting because that's part of my transformation too. Not necessarily that I felt like I was learning psychic medium abilities in a super selfish reason. I think of it more like, could I be one of those people? You know what I mean? And then when we start diving into one of those people, we're kind of getting into, am I special enough to be that? You know? And that's still something that kind of gets under my skin, because being special isn't a bad thing. Like, that's just what makes you a little different. It's the viewpoint of like, other people should think I'm something special. Like, I guess that's the discord for me. Goodness. But it was through my journey that I recognized why it was difficult to do this stuff. And that if you can go to the imagination, then this is perfectly attainable for anybody. And what gets in the way is your own shit that you bring along. That just takes time to clear out. And takes practice of developing a routine. It takes practice of getting to that certain brain state that doesn't surpass an activity level that gets you judgmental or critical, that has you start planning things or has you start questioning things, because that's too far. You need dumb brain, lazy brain. That's what I call it. Not dumb. You're not stupid. You're just kind of lazy. And that's the brain you need in order to tap into that place. This is going to be the video where I'm just clearing my throat. I'm just going to edit this so it's just me clearing my throat the whole time. It's the universe telling me to stop smoking. That's what it is. I know. Yeah, so that was a really great movie. The transformation that the second character goes through, I feel like is something that is perfectly plausible and was sort of part of my transformation of seeing maybe some kind of a selfish way of going into doing this. And then coming out the other side feeling different. And I don't want to do any spoilers here. But it becomes a story that really speaks to my truth and speaks to my passion in what I feel is a very accurate way. So go to Netflix, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. It speaks to my truth, and it's allowing the world a broad instruction to tap into psychic ability. Good job. Good job, guys. Thank you. So let's talk about how to do that. So real quick, nextgenmedium.com is my website. I'm really working on retooling my stuff. And so one of the things that I'm doing is really taking away a lot of the offerings that I have, because I'm trying to get simple with stuff, and I'm trying to narrow down what I need to focus on in order to kind of build new foundation and growth from my business. And so I'm trying to do things a little bit different, but I do have an online course that's available. Check that out at nextgenmedium.com. Link is below. What else do I have? I have a PDF that I call the 0 F's guide, and it's like to the point. This is it. I think it's like 40 pages, which is too long. But that 40 pages includes, definitions of things, just quick instruction, and worksheets that are designed to have you pinpoint your attention to certain things. So the questions I ask are the questions that are gearing your brain towards, like, I need to be aware of this when I go into my journey. The e-course is a deeper dive into this stuff and actually includes a guided meditation. And I feel like that's a huge advantage for the e-course, is being able to not instruct yourself in a meditation, especially when you're not maybe super acclimated to doing meditation. And so the guided meditation is probably like the hugest asset for that e-course, in which you just listen, you press play, and you just focus. With guiding yourself in meditation, it can get a little messy. You get a little off course, your brain waves are in different places, and it's hard to get them right where they need to be. And so that's kind of the disadvantage of that PDF. But the PDF is like nuts and bolts. You want to know the things? Here it is. So that stuff's at nextgenmedium.com. I have a podcast that's out. that podcast is going to be housed somewhere else because I'm going to have a new podcast, and that's the only podcast I really want people listening to, and that's called Onward. It's going to be released the first day of March. I am working very hard to script it out and to feel like I'm saying all the things I need to say. And I get a little doubtful with how I go about doing things in that process. And then I'm in a loop. And then I got to step back and be like, okay, Sarah, calm down. Let's get this straight out. I'm really looking forward to that because I've been working really hard at it. And I've been really picky with how I want to go about it. But also maybe not as simplified as I could, which makes me doubt, but whatever. So those things are at nextgenmedium.com. Follow me on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, but that's more for my area where I live. And there's more things I can offer to people in the area that I feel like are super effective in development that I wouldn't be able to do for international. But you can follow me in both places if you like. They're kind of quiet right now because I'm just so focused on the podcast and I've got life happening at the same time. What else? I have a list. I should be. Oh, you can donate on Patreon, and that's going to be mentioned in the podcast quite a bit. You can sign up for mentoring session. I'm putting those off till after the podcast is released. And then I got to write the next season. It's going to be 4 seasons. Like and subscribe to my channel. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram. Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts. This is what I told you in the last video and the previous video before that and this video as well. Here's what you do. In order to tap into your psychic mediumship ability, you need to go to the imagination. Culturally, we don't understand the imagination as a place of holding truth. So you're going to go there doubtful. You're going to go there saying, the imagination is just a place where we make shit up. And my imagination has never proven to show me facts before. So I'm doubtful that I can connect with that, even if that's a possibility. So you're already fighting these things. How do we get to the imagination? In the right brain space? That's the question. How do we get there? So what we have to do is, if I'm in this place right now where I'm having a conversation and I'm talking to you, I'm in a place in my brain where it's the highest activity that my brain can go to. I'm sure it could be much more high, especially if there was someone else in the room and I was interacting with them. Like, that would put me even higher in that space. But right now, I would consider this to be an alpha brainwave state where I'm able to talk to you. I'm able to think and plan the next thing I'm going to say, how I'm going to say it. I'm also being critical of myself when I'm talking about like doubting my process, my podcast. Wah. So those characteristics of this brainwave is like what's happening right now with me here. We want to get from this place, which is probably where you're at. If you're watching this video, you might be more in the next level down, which is more of a place of taking in the information. Maybe you're doing something that's sort of mundane in the process, folding laundry or driving a car. Like, you need to be aware of what's going on in order to do your task, but it's not like you need all this high brain activity in order to react in a conversation. Like, those are two different places, right? You know that experience. So we need to get you from those higher activity places down to a place of daydream state. And it's funny that I talk about car, like driving a car or folding the laundry or ironing the laundry, because these activities can actually have you dip down into that daydream place. And when you dip down into that daydream place, that's the place to connect in order to observe the imagination. And so the way that I instruct people to do that, hold on. I think I want to add a little bit more to the brainwave stuff. So we want you to dip down to that brainwave of daydreaming, but there's a scale to that. Like there's a spectrum of frequencies, we'll say, that your brain will dip into in that theta daydream place. And really, I feel like to be more effective, most effective with this when it comes to psychic mediumship is to get as close down to that bottom frequency, lower frequency of the daydream space. This is also a place where hypnosis takes place. Fun fact. And this is the one other aspect I wanted to bring in. The next stage down in the brainwaves is the delta phase. This is when we're sleeping, right? There's an episode of Hollywood Medium with Tyler Henry, who I feel is legit. Like, I watch him and I see it. And I think I even have a video where I'm watching an episode for the first time and actually getting information that's related to what Tyler's saying and what the person, and luckily, like, this edited version was able to, give me the feedback that I was on the right track with the information I was getting. So that's on this channel. It's funny I say that. There's an episode of the Hollywood Medium where he puts, I think it's an EEG cap on his head, and there's these electrical nodes all over the cap, and they're measuring his brain waves. And I think Dr. Drew was the guy that was the doctor doing this experiment of measuring the brainwave activity while Tyler was doing a reading with Steve-O from Jackass. And the results was really interesting, in which it seemed like Tyler was in that delta wave state while talking and relaying information to Steve-O. And I think that's kind of my reasoning, or me logically trying to pinpoint where the best place for someone to be is in doing the psychic mediumship stuff. For me, if I go too deep, it starts getting unrelatable. So I might be getting some really fantastic things, but they're not relating to a reality I really understand or information that I understand. So I might be tapping into something there, but it just feels so far-fetched because I'm so deep that it doesn't seem effective in the reason why I'm there. So how do you get there? Okay. You got to close your eyes, and you got to shut off the stuff that's around you. We live our lives being completely distracted from doing anything like this, right? You don't get in a car and get into a daydream space in order for that to be the reason why you're in the car. You're in the car because you need to go somewhere, because you got to be somewhere at a certain time, and then you got to do something that probably has you out of that daydream state. I mean, that's how we live our lives culturally at this point. So you got to shut off the phone. You got to get in a space of being able to be like, okay, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to see what happens. And you close your eyes, and you really need to bring yourself down to that brain frequency, which means there's sort of a routine and a process to develop in order to get there. So you might have to do this a few times before you actually are able to witness stuff happening in the imagination, because it's a new experience. It's a new thing that your body's doing. It's a new thing that your brain is doing. And you might not be super acclimated to this space. So it might take time to just sort of plow through and get the body comfortable and get the brain comfortable with being able to sit and just watch what happens. Because that's ultimately when we get to a place of feeling sort of like we're swimming in our brain and we're observing just information or thoughts. That's where it is. That's when you do a 3, 2, 1 and you let the stage appear. So the way that I direct people to do this is, all right, we're going to sit. It's a quiet place. We're going to do a 3, 2, 1. Close your eyes. And actually in the e-course, I think I do this in a really similar way to get you down into that brainwave place. Interesting thing about, let's bring back Henry Sugar for a second. There's part of the instruction of how to tap in that they mentioned this 5-minute process of being able to focus on something in the mind and the imagination where that's the only thing that's going on for 5 minutes straight or something like that. And it's really interesting because it's sort of allowing the brain to get to that lazy place, but be focused too. So it's almost like really defining that frequency that the brain needs to be at in order to be in that perfect place of reception. Also, in the instruction, there's some details I'm not super, like I can't recall right on hand. So I think I'm going to hold on that thought. But I thought that was an interesting aspect of the Henry Sugar thing that I could bring into this at this point. But in the instruction, I'm having you close your eyes and we're taking deep breaths. In this way, we're kind of slowly getting to the core of you. So we're starting with that physical aspect of you, which is how you're most familiar with reality, is in a physical sense. And so we're taking 3 deep breaths in and out. We're taking our time with that. We're settling in, we're relaxing the body in order to be able to focus on an internal world. And so my next step is for people to use their imagination in order to navigate up the body. And so we're closing our eyes and we're bringing our attention to our toes. And we're just having that awareness of what our toes feel like and just focusing on that one aspect. Again, we're focusing on a physical part of you in order to slowly get you integrated into that mental part. And this is our way of slowly bringing you to that place. And so we work up the body to the ankle. Okay, what does that feel like? What's going on there? I'm taking an assessment. 1, 2, I have 2 ankles. Got you. Moving up to the calf. What's going on there? It's also an opportunity for you to relax muscles that you didn't realize were tense. And so you work your way all the way up the body. And really you want to develop like a pace to it. And that pace is going to directly influence the pace of information that comes through in the imagination once you get to that part of your tuning in. And so you're moving up the body. Eventually you get to the head. And there are sensations that you can look out for too. There came a point with this routine for me where I would actually feel tingling going up my body as I would gain awareness of certain aspects. So my toes, and I'd feel tingling up to my ankles once I got to my ankles, and it was almost like this tingling would go all the way up. And then once I got to my head, I could almost feel like a band around my head. Some people feel like it almost feels like a poke on the top of your head. And to me, in my routine of building things, that's the sensation I would wait for in order to initiate the next step of opening up the imagination, doing a 3, 2, 1, bringing my attention to my, people would call it a third eye. Third eye observation, theater of the mind, mind's eye. That's really the phrase I'm looking for. And that's the imagery you can see in your mind. Some people have difficulty with that. What this space also isn't just visual. This space is also capable of having you hear things that aren't outside but are going on inside. Smelling things. Again, physically, these things aren't around for the physical senses to take in the information, but it's happening internal. The mental senses, the meta senses, the clairs, these are all the same thing and are the tools going on inside your inside world that allows you to gain information via imagination. Mind's eye, imagination. These are the same thing to me, okay? So many phrases for the same stuff. It's just so annoying. So once you're in that space of the imagination, the difficulty is we're not used to using the imagination for this purpose. In fact, we've never been taught that this is part of the imagination. Why do we go to the imagination? First of all, we use it all the time and we don't even know it. People might associate, I use the imagination to write songs. I use the imagination to create artwork. I use the we get very those creative arts kind of way of talking about using an imagination, and then other people who don't do art or don't do music go, well, I just don't use my imagination, and that is bullshit, because we always are using our imagination when we're talking to somebody and we are taking in the information they're giving us. And so when I'm having a conversation with somebody, my imagination will activate if there's something about the interaction that has some sort of fear conditioning associated in it for me. For instance, I'm talking to a boss. This is a person of authority, okay? My instinct and how I grew up was that I am to not be a burden to a person of authority. An emotional burden, mental burden. Like, I know that boundary because it was a very important boundary for me to learn in order to survive childhood socially, but also survive childhood. And so I go to the imagination with this fear aspect, and then my reaction is how I cope and how I react to this boss. I want to people please. I don't want you to think anything's wrong. I don't have any problems. I'm just the most agreeable and personable employee that you have. I don't want to make any waves. I want you to like me. So that's an example of I have it perceived that this boss is going to be mad or think I'm a burden if I actually tell them how I feel. Either if there is something going on in my life that's kind of creating an emotional mess in me, or if I have an idea that could help change things and make things better from my perspective, me practicing that is scary. And it still is to this day, but it's something I've become much more aware of because of the journey I've been on. And actually this past year was a huge lesson in that. And I'm really understanding that this viewpoint, and I think I've mentioned this many times before, my viewpoint of authority has it something that's external of me and something to be scared of. And so my work in the past year has been really seeing this face to face, really confronting this, really dealing with the emotional toll of it and gaining awareness of how deeply rooted this is in me. And now that I have gained that awareness and I see this huge boulder that sits in my way, coming to recognize this is a dysfunction of my perception. And it's not allowing me to fully integrate this authority in me, my own authority. That's been my lesson in the past year. And it takes understanding that that's an aspect of utilizing our imagination we utilize every time we talk to somebody, because we are imposing our ingrained fears on the people we interact with, whether it's associated with that person or if they're a symbol of something from the past that required us to have to change who we are. And then have to repress emotion, suppress, ignore, feel shame about, feel guilt about, all this negative shit. And it's deeply ingrained in our imagination. And that's what we're accessing all the time. Occasionally we use that imagination for fantasy. But again, fantasy is a way to escape reality, right? Because you're going there because the world's not giving that to you. And this is where you want to be. So anyway, what a spiel. A lot of stuff to unpack there. So getting to the imagination, we want to have lazy brain. Lazy brain makes it so that higher level fear access, which requires criticizing, it requires judgment. I think that's maybe a better word, because then we're not having a negative connotation to it. You need judgment in order to protect yourself. You need judgment. It's why it's the perspective of the judgment. That's where we get negative with it. But when we are experiencing those behaviors, activity, in lazy brain state, we're too high up in activity. You really got to dumb it down and just watch. Watch with your mental vision. Watch with your mental hearing. Watch. You're just taking it in. You're observing. And at first, you're going to maybe not have a lot of things going on because you don't do this. You don't go there. One, you don't go there to do these things. Two, like, this is foreign territory. You got to build and acclimate to the space. So that takes a little bit of time. Me, though, I was able to get this stuff right away. And I tried to think of why. There's plenty of people I've helped and that I've been a part of their development journey where this stuff is really, really hard for them. But for me, it was like instantaneous. Like I could do that and there was zero effort in doing it. In fact, it felt natural. It felt innate. And maybe that's another aspect we need to bring to this is when you go to that observation place, there should be no effort involved. Zero. And if there is effort involved, you're going too far with that brain activity. You got to sit back and take it easy. I think what also helped me is that I am a child who, like, you can maybe tell that I had some stuff going on in my childhood. And, we talked about that fantasy place. That's where I would go in order to feel entertained or to feel value in myself. I became a musician. I became an artist because these were things that made me feel, first of all, that I could move my mood and my emotion. That was me having control of that, creating something that was beautiful, that made me feel proud or made me feel like I accomplished something. These were things I could share with other people and they found value in it too. So it made me feel like, okay, people like this. I like doing it. Everybody's winning here. Um, so I think I already was capable of going to the imagination freely and being able to have um, access to it, sort of plowed that road. That was not a difficulty. Submitting to the process of observation, I think that was the new territory for me. Because usually as an artist or a musician, there's an intention of going there in order to work on the project that's physically in front of me. But utilizing the imagination as this is why I'm here, prove psychic ability to me, that was a different reason to go there. And I wasn't familiar with that. So when you go into this place, have that intention of, I just want to see what pops up. I am intending for psychic ability to be proven. Give me artifacts that build a case. And you sit there for 15, 20 minutes. Sometimes you don't know how long you're sitting there for because you're busy observing. And the goal is to build a pace that information gets presented and that you gain awareness of. So it's kind of like something pops up. I'm looking at it. I'm observing it. I'm taking in the different details that are involved in this one piece of information. That's imagery, or that's audible, or that's felt in my body. Maybe an emotion that is felt that just kind of creeps up out of nowhere. And then you're just taking in that information. You also kind of have to use your memory too. So you kind of have to store it and just hopefully be able to recall this stuff after the experience. Again, you're not used to this. It's not going to be a cakewalk for a lot of people just because this whole thing is like a crazy concept. This doesn't seem that crazy, does it? It's not. It's actually dumb. It's actually, I feel it's very innate in us. And I feel like tens of thousands of years ago, this is just how people did what they did. Honestly, I think this is something we've held on to through tens of thousands of years being human beings. This is a human being thing. So once you have accumulated lots of information, then you have to kind of reacclimate to shutting things down in the brain and then kind of activating your awareness of your body again, and then kind of getting those brain activities up, and then you're done. And that doesn't seem so hard. It doesn't cost a thing. It just takes time, takes some patience. And I guarantee you give this time, you give this an honest effort of, I'm here to know it's truth for me. That was how I did it. And now I know things. I think what took me to the next level of really feeling this depth of truth was doing readings with people. I think there was a huge vulnerability obstacle I had to overcome there because I'm very logically minded. I like to have facts. I love science. So there was that barrier that I had to cross. But I also had to be in front of people and not feel like I was legitimate or that doubtful of everything because it was just all so brand new to me. And being able to do it in front of another person, this puts things at a whole different level. And and there was one experience in particular that really just, that was just like, all right, sealed. Like, this is real deal. There's no going back to a different reality now. I had one of those in a reading, and it was just like, this shit's real. I can do it. It's hard. And I think other people can do this too. And so that's my story. Here it is. There you go. That's how you do it. Get to it. I would say give it 6 weeks. 6 weeks is about the amount of time that it took for me to go in and feel convinced of having enough experiences that I would feel like I feel 70% about this. And there's going to be lots of things that you acquire that you're going to be like, that's not stunning, or that's so broad, or I don't feel like, I really feel like you need to develop a way to do it yourself too in order to own the experience. So maybe there's some stuff I'm leaving out because that's for you to decide. Like, when you go in to do psychic, what is it that you're trying to prove? Of course, you're trying to prove your ability, but what information are you going to obtain? And how are you going to confirm that as proof? Because you can't just take it and be like, oh yeah, that's true. No, because the point is you're getting information that you don't know is truth. And it needs to be proven somehow. The exercise for me, and I shouldn't be sharing this because I was supposed to be like, you're supposed to find your own way of doing this. What did it for me was mediumship. I imagined I was talking with a dead person, and I knew I knew family members of this dead person, and I had a list of 25 things coming out of that reading or coming out of that meditation session that I didn't know had any fact or reality to it. And I went to the family member and I said, hey, I did an exercise. I'm trying out psychic mediumship. Can you let me know if any of these things ring a bell for you as to how this relates to your father who has passed? And I was ticking off everything on that list. And that was the 6 week area where I was like, look at all the check marks on this list. And I was seeing things with such detail. What I think really helped in that situation is I knew him to be a very talkative person. Like, he could hold a conversation. And for some reason, I feel compelled to pass that along too, as to maybe who you want to speak with. But that's scary. That's scary to have to go to someone and be like, hey, did a meditation. I think I talked to your dad. How are people going to feel about that, right? And then to go on and say, can you listen to these different things I got that may be wrong? And then you're going to look at me and go, you're a fucking fool for doing anything like this. Like, who do you think you are? What kind of reality do you think we live in? That this kind of fantasy is real? There's a lot there. But these are examples of the perception going on in your brain that's going to fuck with your perception of seeing artifacts in the imagination. It's all tied together. And it's all there for you to explore right now and for you to change your life forever. 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 The wonderful story of Henry Sugar. I am not getting paid for this, by the way. It is on Netflix right now. And it's also a collection of Roald Dahl short story films done by Wes Anderson, including these various cast members. There's another one with Richard in it, the Rat Man or something. That was a weird one. Also included this wonderful Ralph Fiennes guy. Sorry. I know your face. And yeah, it was a great experience. And it was wonderful to see and to think that how many Netflix users out there have this tool sitting right in their streaming library. It's just like, huh, interesting. Check it out. All right. Check out my stuff at nextgenmedium.com. Get that PDF. If you want a deeper dive, go into that e-course. And if you are looking for one-on-one instruction, I do that too. You might have to email me. I'm not sure how I have that set up right now because I have to admit I'm super focused on creating my podcast. So if you want to do the one-on-one, you might have to wait till April. That's my decision. My inner authority deciding what's best for both of us in that situation. Okay. Check me out, nextgenmedium.com. Like and subscribe. Give me a comment. What did you think? Have you seen this movie yet? Is there something else I should be checking out that I can talk about on these episodes? Put it in the comments below. I think that's it. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook if you're local to my area of Bangor, Maine. And that's it. Thanks for watching.